We know that allegories are stories of life or life stories. But like myths and parables and fairy tales and folk tales, they're to be found in every culture and in every persuasion. But before telling a Chinese allegory, there's a reminder of what has been suggested. And that suggestion is that, like life, stories have three levels. They have the level where they have a message or a teaching, and they have a level where there are the archetypes or the sacred numbers and symbols. And they have that level that is the unifying character or characteristic. But along with this, it's been suggested that every element, every character in every story is an aspect of our own being, our own psyche. So perhaps, bearing this in mind, we see what this Chinese allegory brings up for us. It's the story of a young man by the name of Chung Yun. Now Chung Yun was born into a very wealthy, illustrious, noble family. His father was a scholar employed by the emperor of the day. But having been brought up in great wealth, he was a ne'er-do-well. He plundered the wealth of his family, and after his parents passed on, all that was bequeathed to him was wasted on ne'er-do-well friends like himself, on wine and women and the other pleasures of life. And all of this wealth was soon squandered to the point where he was left on the streets with a growling stomach, shoes that were worn down, holes, his feet touching the pavement underneath. But one day, as he was walking in this dejected state, looking up at the heavens, bewailing his fate, admonishing the gods, an old man appeared to him and said, "Young man, what is it that you are bewailing?" And the young Chung Yun gave him the whole litany of what it was that, and how he'd been done well. Nobody helped him, none of his relatives would come to his aid, and all of his friends had left him. The old man said, "How much do you need?" Well, in those days, wealth was counted in strings of coins. And Chung Yun said, "Well, 10,000. "Oh, not enough," said the old man. "Oh, 100,000? "No, that's not enough," said the old man. "Meet me in the town square tomorrow, and I'll have 1,000,000 for you." Well, the meeting took place, and Chung Yun took his wealth, and he had made the thought that he was going to do well with this money. He wasn't going to do what he did before. But old habits died very hard, and soon he was back with his old cohorts in the taverns, drinking and womanizing and so forth, until again he was brought to a penurious state and out on the street again, walking down the road with a grumbling stomach. And so it happened that the old man appeared to him once again, and Chung Yun put his head down, feeling very ashamed to look him in the eye. But the old man said, "Well, I thought I'd find you in this state again. How much do you need?" And Chun Yung, well, with his head hung low, gave him another. "No, not enough," said the old man. "Meet me in the same place as we met the last time." And so it happened again that a great string of money was given to Chun Yun. Well, he had great resolve this time to change his ways and do well and do good things. But oh my, how entrained are these habits and these traits. And soon again he had spent it all on his friends and wine and women and fine horses and so forth and so on, as we well know. And again, of course, brought to that state where he was stumbling down the road, his clothes ragged and his shoes worn and his stomach empty of food. Well, there again was the old man, and he shook his head, and Chun Yun's head was low. He could not even bear to look the old man in the eye. And the old man sighed and said, "Well, look, this is your third chance. This is the last time this can be given you. Meet me in the same place, the same time." This time he was again given a great string of money. But this time Chun Yun, having been debased and humbled to the very nth degree, he really did make a great and superlative effort to change his ways. He went to another place. He set up houses where the widows and the orphan children could be fed. He made a very humble house for himself, and he lived very, very simply. But before their last meeting, the old man had said to Chun Yun, "If you really do have resolve, and you do what you say you're going to do, I will meet you once again. Meet me in the 7th month, on the 6th day of such and such a year, as was counted by the Chinese at that time." So Chun Yun had a goal and a date, a fixed time. And he was totally and absolutely involved in the good works that he was doing. But when the date and time arrived, somehow he knew that it had arrived, that it was time. And so, as he was instructed to do, he made his way up the mountain to a certain place that had been designated by the old man. And when he arrived there, to his very great surprise, instead of finding a Kuan Yin temple as he had expected to do, he saw there an edifice that looked like a great furnace. Out of this furnace there were coming purple flames. And then suddenly he saw the old man. But no longer was he an old man dressed in humble clothing, but in the garb of a great wizard. A large yellow conical hat on his head, and purple robes, almost as bright as the flame that was coming out of the furnace. Now the old man, now displaying himself as one of the immortals, a great wizard, said to Chun Yung, "Yes, you have achieved, and now we can move on." And with that, the wizard took out of his robe 3 pills, and taking a goblet of wine, he handed them to Chun Yun. And he said, "Take this wine and these pills. But what arises from what occurs in ingesting them, remember this well. You must not react. You must keep silence no matter what happens, no matter what comes before you as a reality. Do not make it real and react and make any sound." Now, Chun Yung took the pills and the wine, washed down with the wine, and all of a sudden the furnace disappeared. The place in which he now sat was a great desert. But all of a sudden, Chun Yun heard the sound of horses and the clanking of steel or armor. And very soon he saw coming into his presence what appeared to be a general on horseback with a great entourage of soldiers. And when they arrived, the general got out and put his sword at Chun Yun's throat and said, "Who are you? Tell me who you are, otherwise it's death." But somehow Chun Yun remembered what had been said to him, and he did not react, nor did he speak. Well, the general shouted, "What is this? What is this? This non-speaking creature of humankind?" And he rode off with his entourage of soldiers. And the scene changed again. And before Chun Yun's eyes, there appeared the most delectable and amazing chariots that came down in front of him, inhabited by these most beautiful creatures, nymphs and goddesses of all kinds, inviting him. But he remained unreactive. Somehow the words that the wizard had said, so deeply ingrained in his being, that there was no reaction and nothing uttered from his mouth. And the chariots, the colors, the sounds disappeared. And again, that reality was gone. But again, the clank of armor and steel, the dust and the general. Again, demanding, "Who are you? What is your name? Tell me, or your family will be punished." Chun Yun remained unperturbed, unreactive, and silent. And there before his eyes, the general dragged out Chun Yun's wife. She was screaming, pleading with him, "Please don't let them." The general said, "Speak. Tell me who you are, else this wife will die." But Chun Yun remained unreactive and silent. So before his very eyes, his wife was dismembered. Again, the general said, "We have killed your wife, and please know that we will also kill you unless you react and tell me who you are." Chun Yung remained silent. And with that, the general took out his sword and beheaded him. This was the end of this reality. But then Chun Yung found himself in a place of judgment. Between lives, we might interpret. And those judges that were there said to him, "So now you have lived as a man. Your fate is to be born as a woman." So Chun Yung found himself in another life, a life that was very like the story of the three nasty sisters and the stepmother. As a woman, Chun Yung was subjected to a life of servitude. But she was very beautiful, as these other stories tell. But in this lifetime, she was mute. She did not speak. So the many suitors who came for her hand were put off by the fact that she could not utter a sound, until one young, well-to-do man came along and said, "It does not matter that she does not speak. It matters that she is a good wife. I will marry her." So Chun Yung, as a woman, was married and soon gave birth to a son who she adored above all else. This child was dear to her. But as time went on, her husband of that time grew tired of her silence and speaking to her with an ultimatum. If you do not speak, if you do not utter a sound, then this son is worthy of nothing. But Chun Yung, as a woman, kept his silence and non-reaction. But her husband took the child and smashed it against the wall, shattering its head so that blood was splattered all over. Chun Yung, in the body of a woman, had a great feeling of anguish arise up that came out as a cry from a heart and soul. In that instant, reality ended, and Chun Yung found himself back, standing in front of the great furnace, its flame now ebbing, and the wizard standing scowling in front of him, saying, "You were able to remain unreactive and silent in the face of fear, temptation, lust. But you reacted when there was love. Now all of this work is undone. And with that, the wizard took an implement and shattered the great furnace that had been erected, its flame now still and silent as Chun Yung himself was. Chun Yung found himself back in his city, in the state in which he found the old man and wizard. He went back to that place, the temple to which he had been directed. But there was not a trace of what had occurred, and he was left to his fate. Allegories, fairy tales, folk tales, myths, parables. If we recognize that all of the stories of life have these three levels, like life, the nitty-gritty, cause and effect, the intuitive level of magic, intuition, dreams, and the level of the unifying, the place where we recognize the interrelatedness of life. Three levels of stories, and the recognition that every element of every story, every parable, myth, allegory, fairy tale and folk tale are aspects of our own psyche, our own self. But bringing it down to this level, is there anything that arises for you out of this story? We can easily define its three levels. But for you, what is the moot point of this story? That which resonates with us as a crucial recognition about our journey, our life story.
I found that there was two major things. One is that when you're going to be tested as a person in various different situations in your life, there's no escaping where you're at. And if you're at a particular point where you can pass something, good. If you're not, you won't. Just accept it, move on.
Mm-hmm.
But anything you fail, the universe always gives you another opportunity to pass it over and over again until you do.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't in that story, but I'm sure you had another opportunity. And the other thing I've noticed is that when we talk about our own transformation and our own change, we can try and assess where we're at. And sometimes we can assess it really well, other times we get it completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only way you can really tell if you've changed properly is through testing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've always found is that if I feel I've changed in some way, then I have to wait for a test to come along to prove that I
Okay.